within a week, I got an invite to actually go present our proposal to that company. It's a 4 or 5 billion rand commercial property company.
Talking real money.
So at the time, I was just taking a shot.
Yeah.
My dream has always been actually be in the music.
Oh.
I wanted to do sound engineering and to be a DJ.
Wow.
Yeah. So how did I move from that?
In the private sector,
Yeah.
there is no wasteful like, frivolous expenditure, because if I had to take your money and do that, you would think I'm stealing your money.
Yes.
But in the private sector, in the public sector, it's
People
like,
can take,
you made a mistake. Isn't that the get out of jail free card for comrades?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, we're back yet again with another installment of WARMKOP. It is still your boy Tepper from there, and we are on set at Mkiva Accountants and Auditors. And it's a special episode because our very own WARMKOP wanted to be a CA, but eventually dropped out. But thankfully for that, we're here today to give you WARMKOP. But today we're seeing a chartered accountant, registered auditor, and an MBA graduate. So without further ado, let's make our way in there. Let's see what's popping off. All right, ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, we're back yet again with another installment of WARMKOP. Still your boy Tepper from there. And remember, this is a movement, not content. And like I mentioned before in the intro, I mean, this is a very personal interview. We have here with us a chartered accountant, a registered auditor, and an MBA graduate. Unathi Mkiva.
Yes.
Mkiva, sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Unathi Mkiva. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my brother, for inviting me.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting us to your beautiful space, man.
No,
thank you
thanks.
for just being in your presence today.
No, I appreciate you guys for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
No
I couldn't have said no.
Yeah.
It's a movement, like you said.
Yes, it's not content, it's a
It's
movement.
not about me, it's about everyone else.
Yeah.
Each one, teach one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And really, we just want to get into the heart of like what your profession is, what it takes to be a chartered accountant. I think the first thing for me is like there's so many things you could have studied. And to go into the profession of being a CA, I mean, it's a very intricate financial landscape. There's so many different variables. What actually made you go into this field and become who you are today?
Correct. No, I think you're right by saying I think I could have done so many things. And I'll give you maybe a background story to how I got into this. My dream has always been actually be in the music.
Oh.
I wanted to do sound engineering and to be a DJ.
Wow.
Yeah. So how did I move from that?
Yeah, it's a
to
complete
being
pivot,
an
like
accountant?
complete 360.
Yeah, it's a complete 360. I think it was the influence from my parents, specifically my mother. So I'm possibly living my mother's dream at this point. May her soul rest in peace. So I think she wanted to be an accountant at the time. But I mean, you understand back in the days, apartheid wouldn't allow her to actually study what she wanted to study as a professional. So she could actually only be a clerk at the time. So she's always had this vision that she must have an accountant within the household. And me being the firstborn child from her, I was forced technically to actually live that dream. I tried avoiding it to a certain extent, applying for, sound engineering courses on the side without her knowing. But parents, when they want something, they actually go through the entire process, make sure the applications at university is what they want you to do.
Yeah.
So at some point, even the first year I did, I was trying to hide from her that I'm actually going to venture into sound engineering the second year.
Yeah.
But the instruction was clear.
Yeah.
I'm taking you to school. I'm not paying for anything else. You are going to become accounting, and I want you to be a chartered accountant.
Yeah.
So the instruction was clear. And over time, I think from my side, I started growing, love for the numbers as well. And the other thing is she actually, without me knowing, she took me to a commercial school. But at the time, I didn't really understand that that's what she wanted me to be. So I did accounting in high school. So I had already been in the financial side of things, mathematics and doing all those things.
Yes.
And that's how I actually got into it. But eventually, because I could have just become accounting, decided to venture into just being a general accountant. But now you in varsity, you get influenced by other people, your peers at school, and you can see that, the graduates from Become Accounting, they go to different lectures, they study differently, there's additional courses they want. So you get encouraged that, okay, I want to actually do this thing the hardest way like other people as well. So then I think also then the personality, started kicking in, showing interest into that. So long and short of it, that's how I got into loving the accounting, and I went on to actually finalize it eventually. And I tried also while I was still doing Become Accounting to continue with my side dream, becoming a DJ on campus.
So that still continued.
Yeah, that still continued.
Yes.
But at some point, I think once I got to finalize my undergrad, at some point I needed to make a decision. Do I want to be a professional, or do I want to enter the entertainment space?
Yes.
So from there, then I made it clear, okay, let me just go into the professional space and be an accountant, go do my articles. And at the time, I think there was still a huge shortage of accountants in the country. So then I saw that as an opportunity as well. Say, okay, maybe this is what I need to do. And there was quite a lot of influx at the same time with DJs, people entering the music industry. I've tried getting, and I remember I did my undergrad at Gqeberha in PE. So small, not a very small town, but no, compared to Joburg, it's very small. So if you get there and there's, politics among the DJs from the same area, my mind told me that if I get to Joburg, the politics will be even worse. The competition is too tight because the market is saturated. So I was like, maybe the space that's less saturated, because already the skills gap is already indicating that there's less accountants in the country. So let me just go into this thing that actually requires the skill that I've got at this point. So then that's where I then progress into following then the chartered accountant, doing my honors, and then doing my finalizing my articles, the entire process then to getting to CA, which I think it took me about 8 years to get to that stage, if not 9 years, to finalize it. So it's not an easy course to actually finalize. That's why not everyone can become a chartered accountant. That's why most people take pride in becoming a chartered accountant, because it's not an easy course to actually finalize. So yeah, long and short of it, I'm living my mother's dream.
I wanted to say,
becoming a chartered accountant.
And that's a beautiful story, because this episode, like in and of itself, like is a very emotional one for us as well. Just based on the intro I did coming in here, and just got a joke in my head that you went from working with rather ukshayi number to working with numbers. That joke just came into my mind. But it's such a beautiful, like, emotional story, and that's so funny, because my next question was like the emotional toll it takes on you to actually get into the space. You alluded to it now, that it was, to some extent it took its toll on you. Can you speak about that process of like the heavy weight it bears on you, and actually like just pushing through? You said it took you 8 years to get to where you are today. Please, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, the process itself is an emotional one. Requires quite a lot of sacrifices. I will tell you, for example, during the time I was doing my honors, I think that's when I lost most of the friends I had. Because during that time, I was doing my honors while I was actually working at the same time. So you go to work 8 to 5. By 5 o'clock, of 4:30, you leave the office, you go to campus, and then you get to campus around 6 o'clock. You attend classes for 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes like 2 hours, 6 to 8. By 8 o'clock, you just take a break, go grab something to eat. By 8:30, you get back to studying again. For studying from 8:30 up until like 11:30. And then you drive back to your house. After that, you get home around 12 o'clock. And from there, you just sleep. So you're probably getting like a maximum 7 hours sleep or 6 hours sleep.
Very grueling.
Right? But it's a sacrifice that sometimes we need to go through to get what we want. Why did I put myself through that sacrifice? I think at the time I had realized that for me to get what I want, at that time I had already realized, okay, I do want this as well. Because I've been conditioned for so long to a certain extent that this is what you must do. So I had no other choice, but it was something I wanted to do. So sacrifice every time you want something I don't think you can get what you want in most times without sacrificing. And I had to do the same thing from my side. Is it hard work? Yes, it does involve hard work. but at the same time, you need to get through the process of what is important at that point in time. The emotional, call it heavy weight on me. I think also, like I said, you lose friends.
Yes.
Our family doesn't see you as often as you
used
want
to.
to see you. They want to see you.
And I think, sorry, just a little bit, like you mentioning that your mother, like she's late now.
Yes.
Maybe to some extent there is some thought of maybe that could have been quality time you spent with her as well
Exactly.
as you were studying.
Exactly.
So I think it just kind of builds up.
Exactly.
I assume actually.
No,
I don't know.
it's a correct assumption.
Yes, sir.
Because during holidays, for example, even when I was doing my undergrad, I would have less time to actually go home and spend time with family. Because if I've got time, probably I'm there for like a weekend. While you call it July holidays, people are home for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Me, I would only be there for maximum a week. So you don't really get to spend time enough with family. And those are the sacrifices. But I mean, at the same time, for her, I think she understood because this is what she wanted me to do. And she wanted the best for me, right? So when I say I'm struggling at school and there's quite a lot that I need to do, I can't come home, she would understand that, right? But obviously other things like personal relationships with girlfriends, if you don't have that support around you, it becomes a problem. And I do think from my side, thanks to my girlfriend now, my wife, if I didn't have the support from her as well, I think I would have gotten to a point where I might have given up. Because I think without the support with those that love you, sometimes we give up. And we do need to acknowledge those things at some point. So my family, closest family, friends, like I said, you lose friends. Because friends, sometimes you've got different types of friends. Friends that want to have fun with you. Those friends will always be there when you're having fun. But when it's time for you to actually put in the hours, they won't be there. So you must be willing to let go of those friends because you know they were just there for a good time. Then there will be friends that are there for you through the hardest times. Those are also your friends. So with me, I've had to then juggle the two, and obviously some of them I'm still friends with them now, because obviously then if the friendship is strong, even if you don't keep in touch or in contact for some time, if the friendship is strong, when I come back to you like, boy, I'm back. It's not the same. Sometimes, but I mean, like it all depends on how was the relationship was with them at the same time. But yeah, emotionally, it does have an emotional impact on you, but it's how you deal with it. And for me, I think mentally, I'm always more on the positive things. I don't like dwelling too much on problems. If there's a problem, I want to deal with it now and then I move on. If I can't solve it, my view is let it go and then move on to something else. That's my mentality. I don't like dwelling too much on something that I cannot solve. If it's beyond my control, just let it be and move on.
I think one thing because there was a point where we started, you mentioned that you're from Gqeberha, and then you're already observing what things are in Joburg, the emotional landscape. Sorry, the economic landscape. Apologies, a lot of emotionality.
Yes.
The economic landscape, right? So South Africa has a very different and very nuanced economic landscape, which was obviously the arena that you were going to enter. So I want to ask you, like, as a South African, like, how unique is South Africa from an economy perspective versus what you see in the world, in your experience?
My experience, it's a good question that you ask because just a bit of context. So when you do your articles in accountant, there's I did my articles with, call it the top 5 big accounting firms in the world. Amazing. So with that, you get an opportunity to actually go on secondment to an international office. So you can decide to go to Europe or to the US or to Asia. You just choose where you want to go. So I tried exploring that opportunity. And for me, the reason I wanted to do that was I wanted to learn how other people live in other countries and how do the business world actually functions in other continents. But unfortunately, I opted not to go, not to take the opportunity.
Why?
The reason I did not is simply because my nature doesn't allow me to actually allow other people to have control over what is going to happen with me tomorrow. In a sense that if you are a director in a company and you are my mentor, I don't want my future to lie in your hands.
Okay.
I want to have it within my control that, okay, tomorrow I want to be at this level within the corporate ladder, and what is it within my control that I can do to get to that point? So the career pathway within the firm, for me, was not giving me certainty as to that I'll get what I want. Rather, it was another 7 years after spending 7 years to get where I was, to get to where I had imagined myself to be. So from that perspective, I opted to ideally just leave the company,
Yeah.
and with that opportunity, but rather to go create my own future, which is where we are today.
We are today.
Right.
It's very commendable, man.
Yes,
Very
so
commendable.
so it was because of that. So I could have taken the opportunity,
Yes.
but with that also, once again, with what I'm saying, now I've got control as to where I can go,
Yes.
which economy I can go explore.
Yes.
So with that, then I decided to start doing my MBA. From doing the MBA, then that's when I started traveling around the world.
Yes.
Through the international programs as well. So I went to Japan. I went to South Korea. I've traveled to the US. So from a perspective of understanding how different economies actually operate, I've actually done my own, call it exploration, to understand how differently are people actually operating out there,
Yes.
and how well can we also advance what we have currently here in South Africa. And I think we were still talking about the differences in different economies.
Correct.
I
think more so like South
yes,
Africa.
it lies in South Africa.
Yeah.
Yes. So my view was also at the time was, if I take this opportunity to go live in another country for 2-3 years and then I come back later, which if I do that, most times that take on those programs, sometimes they don't come back because they like it so much there, like too many problems, economic issues in South Africa, I don't want to go back there.
Yeah.
My view was more on the different side, that if I leave South Africa with the skills that I have, what am I then leaving behind, which is my country? Because I do believe that the skill I have is a skill that should be utilized for other small businesses. And at the time when I decided to start my business, my focus was solely on, let's help other small emerging businesses to actually manage their companies, govern their companies correctly so that they can actually grow. And back then, 2014, when I founded the company, there was quite a lot of advancement towards small
it's 10
businesses.
years now.
Yes. Yeah, no, we've been in operation for 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah, you just reminded me. 10 years, yes. So we've been doing this for 10 years. So, and that was the reason we started the firm.
Yeah.
Let's go out there. There's a one-man-owned company. They don't know how to manage their finances. They don't know how to deal with their governance within their company. They don't know how to manage the risk. But they've got a product. Everyone loves the product. Right now, we've got an issue with the company, for example, that just started 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Drip, that's just been liquidated.
Oh, yes, I saw
so
that.
such things to me, they're very heartbreaking because it's an issue of a company that was a success story that could have been saved had it just gotten right advisors around, the founder, right team that can advise what needs to happen. I don't blame the owner. Obviously, he's not he started 4 years ago. He did very well. I commend him for what he's done.
Yeah.
And I do believe that and hope that he bounces back, and continue creating other brands that South Africans would love. But for me, as a business advisor, professional that specializes in that space, such things don't sit very well with me because I'm somehow sitting there. I'm like, I sacrifice not going onto an international, trip for me, for my own career, for me to actually service such companies.
Yes.
Not to blame the people that were around him. Also, I don't know the details of what had happened, so I won't comment much on it. But I think at some point you do feel undone. That not undone per se, but like feels sorry that you couldn't be there to save the company. In that process, obviously, then there's people that lose jobs, which then let's get back to the question you asked about the economy, this setup of the economy.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of issues within our economy from a perspective of the structure itself. And you would recall that from the time we were given, call it the political power in 1994, the economy was more based on manufacturing and mining at the time. And we've evolved from that so much. And if you look at the GDP, which sectors are actually bringing in much more money for the country, you'll see that we've evolved quite a lot. Now there's a mismatch between the skills that are there and the skills that the sectors and the economy actually requires. And hence now we've got this issue around unemployment at this point. Because as a business owner, I can tell you, if I've got, call it an admin job, do you know how many applications we get for an admin job?
I can imagine.
Like 800, 500 applications for one admin job.
One
That
position.
means there was an influx of administrators that went to actually study administration.
That particular,
right?
Yes.
Now, link that then to where's the need for the skills.
Yeah.
Each company in South Africa can only employ maybe, 1, 5, 10 administrators at most. So where is then the requirement of the other skills? It's in the technical skills, right? Technical skills and call it the artisan skills. And those are the things that people are not studying. So from a perspective of how well the economy is structured, I think we're good at changing and moving on with the times, because our country now is good in ICT, it's good in finance, it's good in producing new products, in innovation. We've got lots of patents that are actually being registered in the country with CSIR, for example. So we are very good as a country in starting new things, all right? But I don't think we've got the skills now to actually take those products and take those ideas globally. I think that's where we fail. One, with that also, then you can somehow blame the government and how much of, call it, their support they give to these ideas. It takes too long for us to get our products and our innovative ideas, get to the global stage, simply because our government is too slow in making sure that there is supporting to those such things. So you find that, I'm sure, with the platform that you and the interviews that we've done, a bulk of the owners also that you're dealing with, they always complaining about, we don't have funding support from the government, and I've got this product. Exactly, right? So such things, it tells you that yes, there is a need somewhere for developmental finance. And there's this idea in South Africa that we do have developmental finance. We don't have developmental finance. The DFIs that you have, call it the developmental finance institutions like your NEF, and those are not developmental finance institutions, ideally, because they give you a loan and you must pay it back. What does that mean? If I've got an idea, I'm trying to start it off, it fails. What are you left with?
How are you going to pay it back?
What are you left with? If you're left with a debt, can you start another company now that you're bankrupt? You are listed at the credit bureau.
Yes.
You can't. So that setup is a failed setup already on its own.
You set up for failure from the very beginning.
Exactly. Yes. Right. So there has to be an understanding that we are a developing country. We need developmental finance, not the way it's structured at this point. And it's so much to a point where even the easy wins, the government just let it go. Where, for example, I was doing, without giving too much details, I was doing a valuation for another company that is doing a battery system, which the mechanism of a battery, the latest, call it technology in battery, is lithium battery. They were developing a battery that is actually better than a lithium battery. Longer storage time for the battery. To cut the story short, CSIR was funding the project, but now the company is stuck somewhere because CSIR doesn't want to continue with the funding of the prototype. So now you can understand then, from a developmental perspective, if I've developed a prototype, but now I need to take it to market, the quicker I get to market, the better it is for me to actually start selling this thing internationally and patent it, and then I can. Exactly. Yes. Well, now the minute I develop it, and I take another 2 years to actually put it to market, there's another Chinese company that's there, with their support from the government, they going out into the entire world and selling that entire same technology.
Yes.
What happens in 2 years' time? The 5-7 million they've spent CSR on that project is a waste of money.
It is. And I think what you're saying really alludes to just the South African landscape, and I guess how dynamic it is for accountants, right? So I wanted to ask you, with all these challenges considered, and also what you're seeing happening to the small businesses, how does that then shift your approach to financial responsibility?
Yeah. So I think we also do have, I'm part of a small incubation program now with South African Institute of Chartered Accountants.
Yeah.
So I do donate my time where I can also to actually support other businesses. So what that means is those companies, ideally, the services we're offering them is at a huge discounted price, basically.
Yeah.
So with that, for example, you find that these companies are in an incubation program. So there's an expectation that there's a support from the funders of the incubation program.
Yeah.
So what I then usually do is, because they're facing these same challenges. So ideally what you then need to set up, you need to set up the business from a perspective of understanding the challenges of how they are actually operating.
Okay.
And some of those things for me is one, companies nowadays need to focus on diversifying your service offering. You can't just be an engineering company. That's all you do. If you're an engineering company in a mining setup, you must do underground and above ground, because then the industry and the sector itself is so saturated. There's so many SMMEs out there to service to the point that in certain instances you can't even differentiate what is the difference between Tsepo's SMME and Unathi's SMME.
The next party, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's gotten to that point. So once then you get to a point where you can diversify your service offering, you're in a position where you can now mitigate the risk of your company failing. Diversification, what it does, also it mitigates a situation of, I want to expand my business tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now you've got a way of actually bringing in money from different revenue income generations,
Yeah.
which you can utilize to diversify somewhere else. Now that mentality, what it does, it tells you that you don't need to wait for the government to fund what you want to do.
You are creating your own opportunities.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
So I'm implementing such things, for example, with some of these companies that I'm working with, where there's a company, the owner or the founder is an engineer by trade. But my advice is, don't take the money that you are making from these services, the profits you are making, and buying flashy cars to, show your success.
Yeah.
Take that money. I need you to start a property company.
Yeah.
Diversify into estate.
Correct.
In the area that you're operating in, there's a shortage of accommodation. So then if you put that profits that you're making into that, then at least you've got now additional income that is coming in.
Yeah.
Right. So it's those different ways of, trying to change business owners' mindset.
Yeah.
To say, let's not focus on the government giving us money. Yes, we'll go there,
Yeah.
but it should not be your first prize. Try and work around the challenges that we are facing, because you need to understand that there's 50,000 SMMEs that are applying for the same limited funding from the government, right? So at some point, we also need to acknowledge how big the problem is as business owners and try and navigate around it. But I mean, that's why I'm a professional, then I can assist some of the businesses in that regard by going through the finances. Obviously, for me to do that, I need to go through the finances, make sure that the primary operations also, when I suggest that, I can't suggest something that will kill the primary operations, all right? So I can't say to someone, take this money, go start an real estate business, but somehow now later on this guy has a cash flow issue with the operation that he started. So I need to be mindful of what advice am I giving and to what scale is he diversifying at the same time.
I feel like a lot of that alludes to then the business's own sense of integrity and also ingenuity.
Yeah.
But also leading into that then is then the question of financial transparency and accountability. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So I wanted to ask you as a professional in your field, what is your role in helping businesses and I guess overall the country with navigating that? Yeah.
As chartered accountants, just in summary, maybe let me give what chartered accountants do.
Yes, sir.
So chartered accountants can be doing various things within the financial services sector and the business world at the same time. So you get accountants that will be, I'd call it advisory accountants. So they will be either specializing in business management, business strategies. You get those type of accountants. So those accountants, they have an understanding of financial management, right, and financial accounting, but they specialize in strategy, right? They specialize in taking a business idea from you and say, how are we going to implement it? How are we going to implement it better? How are we going to set it up for it to actually start scaling as quickly as possible? So those people have a clear understanding about marketing. They've got a clear understanding about operations. They've got clear understanding about business processes, right? And then you've got accountants then that, like me, that specialize in governance.
Okay.
Those people will be, for example, me, I'm an auditor. I audit companies. I sign off or give assurance on whether your financial statements are correct or are fairly presented. Also, what I do, I do offer tax-related services. I help you with all your SARS or South African Revenue Services issues for your business. Are you paying the right tax? Are you saving enough on tax? What I don't do, unfortunately, which some people like doing or want always to do, is to evade paying tax. So we don't help people. We don't help people with tax evasion, unfortunately. But there is proper tax planning which can help you save tax, and those things is about how you structure your company, how you structure your operations, how you structure where you want to operate at the same time. So those things we can assist people with such. And then additionally, how do you now, from a scaling perspective, when you want to buy new companies, when you want to diversify into a different industry, how do you value those deals, those investments? How do you value a capital decision on buying a truck for your business versus continuously hiring a truck, right? So from a perspective of financial security for the country, chartered accountants play a crucial role. Simple thing as, for example, an audit report that I give to you as a business owner. You as a business owner, you take that financial accounting results and the financial statements and my audit opinion and my audit results, and then you give it to the bank. Now the bank trusts that you have been independently been audited by me. Now, if you're applying for a funding application or a facility or a car financing with the bank, what then the bank has done? They've relied on me saying, yes, Tsepo has a very good operating company and his liquidity and solvency is actually in a good state. And I've checked his budgets and I've checked his cash flow forecast. He will be in a position to pay you in the next 3 years, even if you give him the funding, right? So that's what I do. So I give credibility to your business about how you operate and whether you actually going to be existing in the next 3, 4, 5 years. So from call it a financial market security perspective, auditors and chartered accountants play a crucial role. Second part of that is you would understand that as an auditor, I can't audit and prepare your financial statements, right? So I can only audit. Now, on the other side, there's another accountant that has prepared the numbers that I am reviewing, right? Yeah, by professional. No, we can't. Otherwise, you have a situation. You remember the issue we had about KPMG previously, and I'm sure you've had the scandals. Those things come from perspective of independence not being adhered to. Me as an auditor wanting to audit my own work, or me as an auditor auditing one company and still want to offer advisory services to. So such things, they mess up your integrity as an auditor. So hence, by profession, it's always preferred that if you're doing one service for a client, try and steer away from offering additional service that will be competing directly with what you were doing, right? But obviously, accounting firms across the world have become clever with these things by creating different companies, different divisions. But however, even the standard, our professional conduct does advise on, even if you do those things, how should you be treating it? And obviously, it's about your professional judgment at the end of the day, which I think that's where maybe the problem is, because professional judgment means different things when money is involved, right? So maybe there has to be a clear understanding, like, can you do it or you can't do it? And that's it. Because now once you say professional judgment, I'll leave it up to you as a professional to make a judgment. When the deal is on the table, do you think someone...
They won't.
That's a reality.
Money is money.
Right.
Money is money.
Hence, you then sit with these situations. KPMG is getting into these scandals. There's a recent one now with PwC in the UK. So such things, you don't want those things, right? But I was just answering, you thought it can be in-house.
In-house,
yes.
You
know, and that's the thing I constantly have to teach small business owners as well, because they always come with that understanding.
Yeah, like it's a one-stop shop. Like just leave it there.
So you can prepare my accounts, and you can audit them. You can submit taxes or do a tax calculation for me. Then I need to come back and indicate to them my professional obligation. And over the last couple of years, then that has been obviously an ongoing, process of me teaching small business owners to understand how we operate, basically. So it's my obligation, obviously, as a professional, to indicate to them, as a client, that I can't do this, but I can recommend someone that can assist you.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm letting you go as my client, but I will recommend someone, have a discussion with them.
I feel like in your line of work, it's definitely a numbers game.
Yes.
It's numbers throughout. Yes. So I wanted to ask you, I mean, you've seen the impact of like money management or the financial management and the impact it has on socioeconomic issues.
Yes.
So how does that now help you as an accountant have a viewpoint on addressing things like inequality and also like financial literacy?
Yeah. Let me start with the inequality part of it. Yeah. So when I started the business, for example, we're still too early into the democracy. Still 2014, 20 years, 24 years into democracy. So very young democracy, basically. So there's still people that are still experiencing disadvantage in a sense. And to me, I think those people were the female.
There's even a big bulk of like people that look like us.
Yeah.
Let's say when democracy started, all we got was just political navigation and some political voice. And I really mean some.
Yeah.
But when it comes to economics, and I don't want to make this too political, but we're speaking specifically on economics.
Yeah.
We still know which part of this country has more money.
Yeah.
If I can.
Correct.
But yes.
That's true.
Yes.
That's very true. So when I then started the firm from my side, I had to make a decision as to what is my contribution to the economic and social ills of our country. So I took a decision that my values will be aligned to making sure that I employ young people. So what we do, I always try and invest in making sure that we advancing our company through employing young people, developing and training young people, basically. So we are a registered training office. So we take students from varsity, we put them into a 3-year contract.
That's very commendable.
And then they, thank you so much. And then through that three-year program, they finalize, and then it's a process of them actually getting to qualify as a chartered accountant. So we are on that program with the South African Institute of Chartered Accountant. Yeah. We've also seen over the years, since we started operating, that not everyone wants to be a chartered accountant, but they still want to be part of the profession. As a result, we then went ahead to actually register for another program as a training officer again with the South African Institute of Professional Accountants. So that if you feel chartered accountants in the 7 years is too much for you, you can go for a professional accountant profession as well. That also gives you, call it a professional designation as well, in the form of a professional accountant, not just as a chartered accountant. Yes. So from our perspective and my view in trying to contribute to, alleviating the social ills of our country, I think young people is what we need to focus on. Yes. I've also believed that women, and by statistics, I think that there's more women in the country than female, than males. God. Right. Yes. So what I also always do also is I try and make sure that some roles are more open to actually young females at the same time. Yeah. The reason for that is we don't want to get to this point where young females are always the last to be considered for anything, right?
The issues being addressed.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a big issue around, obviously, in the country, let's employ more women, let's involve women more into the economy. So from my perspective, to answer your question was, I can't solve everything, unfortunately. With the limited time, limited resources I have, I can only look at one thing and then try and resolve it and try and contribute to resolving that issue, right, from my side. So young people, that's my focus, preferably young women. Will be what we want to employ and make sure that they actually progress in their careers. Obviously, our aim is train them, allow them to actually grow their career so that they can go out there and actually become what they want to be. And our focus is obviously professional accountants and chartered accountants. With that, then they can either be an auditor or just a chartered accountant that operates in corporate, or sometimes you can also go do the same thing I'm doing and go offer the services to other people as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Or as an independent consultant.
Exactly.
I think if I can just take a few steps back just to recap, I'm hearing a lot about you now. You're telling me a lot about your story and how you got into this profession. I think the one thing I appreciate is you found a balance between your parents' own dreams for you and the way to make your own sense of self come through from that. I appreciate that. Then going into when you started working, having the opportunity to go abroad, but choosing not to, but staying here in South Africa, like setting boundaries and kind of segmenting that I am this person, I really applaud that. And obviously now that you have influence, you're employing more young people and you are also extending like an aid of help to other generations and also unaddressed communities. You're in a place of influence and you're in a place where you can bring immediate change to people's lives. So having said that, this version of yourself, who you are today, 10 years later, what would this version of you tell your younger version of you in those 8 years you were saying things were not easy for you? What would that version of you say to that other version of you?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say is I think if I had good foresight, I wish I had I said that this is not going to be as easy as I thought it was going to be. And the younger me right now, I would say to them is one, not everything is given to you on a silver platter, and no one owes you anything out there. And I think for me that's the mentality I tried getting into over the years, because when I started off, I knew what I wanted to do, but I thought because I'm black, things will be easy for me, right? And that's a mentality we all face and we suffer from once we start a business, that because I'm black, this thing should be easy for me. It's not. Yeah. No one cares about whether you're black out there in business. Like, honestly, what matters there is, what are you offering to me? What is your value proposition to what I'm going to pay for? And if you cannot value that, and you cannot offer it, and you cannot clearly demonstrate to someone, no one deserves to give you their money. And that's the honest and the mentality of my younger self nowadays is, no, give me money. But my question is, why must I give you money? Like, you haven't even showed me a single value of what I must pay for, but you want me to give you money. So I think it's that mentality that's point number one. That if I had known earlier that because I'm black doesn't mean
You're very sharp with that. You don't miss the beat.
I have to.
Yes, sir.
So without call it trying to put color to this thing, but I think that our economic policies do assist that we get preference as black people in business. But for me, also, when I started my business, I think I tried making it too hard for myself without necessarily having to do that. But I would give you my thought process, but I decided not to look for business that will actually look for because I'm black.
Yeah, what you look like, yes.
So I tried to stay away from public sector related work when I founded my business. I stayed purely on private sector. And my business was purely focused on chasing other black people or black business founders and supporting them and offering them my value proposition. So with that, and you understand, our brothers and our sisters, when it comes to paying, not always ready to pay.
African
right?
time.
Yeah,
Not to speak ill, but
I need to give 100 reasons before they can pay. So with that, it taught me over the years that actually, yes, I should show people why they should pay me.
And you get into more rooms as well, that mentality.
Exactly.
You get into more rooms that way.
With that, over time, then I obviously managed to gain this confidence that, I can approach a listed company and offer my services. And to give you an example, I took a shot in 2018 on a company that I thought at the time was too big for us. And I actually went and submitted a proposal. Within a week, I got an invite to actually go present our proposal to that company. It's a 4 or 5 billion rand commercial property company.
Talking real money.
So at the time, I was just taking a shot.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that I'd make it because one, you submit a proposal, they'll see you like you're a small company,
Yeah.
you're not worth our time. But fortunately, they said, yeah, oh yeah, we got your proposal. Please come through and present it. The chairman wants to have a meeting with you.
Nice.
So you always have to
That's
take.
very commendable. So I don't want to not
Thank
acknowledge
you.
that.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you, sir.
commendable.
So you need to take the chances. Like that's point number 2.
Yes, sir.
Point number 1 is no one owes you anything out there. Point number 2, take the chances. Even if you believe that chance is too big for you,
Yeah.
take that chance. That's why it's called a chance.
And I thank you for that, because now, when your mom said to you those many years ago, I think we can say now 18 years ago,
Yeah.
when she said to you that, no, I want you to be an accountant, in her mind, and I don't want to speak maybe wrong, but I assume in her mind it was, it's the safe bet.
Yes.
But now, and mind you, I'm learning this through you right now. The more I listen to you is, don't ever go through the safe bet.
Yes.
Don't think things will go. So, number 1, in your opinion, what is the safe route? And number 2, what is a way to break against the grain and not, because what you're saying to me now is, even if you do have the qualification, don't think that there's a route to take change the grain, shift the boundaries, change the dynamic. How is that, or rather, how would you impart that knowledge to someone younger, being able to not go the safe route, the safe bet, and changing that dynamic?
Yeah, I think I like the fact that you mentioned that sometimes we like taking the safe route all the time when we do something.
Yeah.
And that's a danger because with that we're trying to avoid making the sacrifices along the way. So for me, the easiest way is to do what?
Yeah.
Let me just take the easy way out, right? But you only find out later on when things now are not working out as you expected them to work out for you, right? In life. But obviously, I think our lives as humans are destined in a certain way, in a certain sense. But to a certain extent, we do have control over what my future looks like, right? And for me is, I think, one, I need to commend my parents for being, strong-willed and very adamant that, yeah, we know you like music. This is what you want to do, but we are not paying for that. You are going to go do what we're asking you to do.
Yes.
And the nice part about it is now, today, when I look back, and this is the reflection I did, I think, about 4 or 5 years back. If now I had done music, I don't know where I would be, right? But I wanted to get into music for production, not necessarily be. Obviously, once you start production, then more money is in, performance and, being out there. And I think I would have been sucked into that, although I wanted to actually do sound engineering and be proper sound engineer, basically. But I don't know where I would have been. But what I can tell you is what I'm doing now can fund all of that if I want to go back into it.
Full circle moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And right now I've set up a structure that also allows me to actually have the time. If I want to do that, I can actually go do it.
Have the time to do that.
Right. If I so want it to that point, I can do it. Right. So sometimes life works in different ways. So you need to make sacrifices sometimes so that you can get what you want. So don't be afraid to actually make a sacrifice for a short period of time. Short could be 10 years, short could be 15 years.
Yeah, it's relative.
That 15 years could actually give you another 40 years of peace of mind.
Yes.
Financial freedom.
Yes.
Right. So hence I'm saying, if I had gone for sound engineer, I don't know where would I have been.
Would have looked like.
Would I have been financially free? I don't know. Would I have been in a peace of mind with my family that I'm quite secured? I'm not bothered about other things that most people are bothered about. I don't know, right? I can't make that assumption that it wouldn't have worked. But at this point, I think I'm comfortable that even if I had not made that decision to actually go to music, I can still go back, and I'm happy with where I am today.
Sir, I want to thank you for the jewels. I call them jewels, like words of wisdom, words rich with so much meaning.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. But now, for my last question, I want to give you a drop drop mic. You were an aspiring musician once upon a time.
Yes.
Just drop the mic once.
Okay.
I think where the country is now today, there is a lot of visibility and recognition of what the government is doing.
Yeah.
And all the activities that somewhat are fruitless, and we never see where things are. I mean, you hear that, no, this project was like 80 million, and then you look at it, was like, no, that's 1 million. So at the current state the country is now today, as an accountant, how would you address that?
Point number one.
I think WARMKOP wants to add another question to that.
Yes.
I'll read it verbatim.
Okay.
Let me read it verbatim.
Okay.
Right? So, right now, a lot of things are raising eyebrows in government. Right?
Yes.
We're seeing this whole concept of things being unauthorized.
Yes.
And to that, things are irregular and fruitless.
Yeah.
Right? So, there's a wasteful and there is wasteful expenditure right now in government.
Yeah.
And with that being said, would you say that it just sounds like a fancy way to say fraud and get out of jail card?
Yeah.
Or rather, how would you address, let me put it this way. I'm trying to summarize it. How would you address our current comrades right now in government?
Okay.
And all these, one might say, frivolous things that are taking place in government right now currently?
Yeah. So I think the short answer to your question is
sir.
we need to make it so hard for people to commit crime, and we need to make sure that those that have been found to have committed crimes are punished to the fullest.
Yeah.
Because then that way you've put systems that make sure that these things don't happen. And if I find you, then there's a justice process that actually works, and it makes sure that you get punished, right? That's the long and short of it. At this point, unfortunately, our justice system is a very long-winded process. You get convicted today of allegations of ground crime. That case might take, 4 or 5 years for it to be finalized in most cases, because there's investigation that needs to happen. Those things simply because of the backlog in similar cases, backlog in our justice, in our courts in South Africa. Once again, limitation of legal professionals, right? So to the other part where what must young people do? Look for what is actually a shortage in the country. Go study that. Legal profession right now, we've got a backlog of about 5 years in civil cases.
Yes.
If you have a civil case, you must wait for 3 to 5 years for your matter to actually go sit in court in front of a judge. That's a problem. It's a disaster, that one. So we need to solve that problem. Two, then back to the issue of how do we resolve the issue. The system itself has to actually have specific courts that deal with these matters if we are serious about it. If you recall, I think 2-3 years back, if not 5, President Zuma opened up a court that was intentionally there to deal with GBV matters. And that court is there for only those, because we realized that gender-based violence was an issue in our country. So if then we have identified that corruption, especially in government, is an issue, then we ought to actually think about the same process. How do we make sure that we don't have backlog? Because once someone commits a crime and then you don't make an example with them, the next person is doing the same thing. It continues. And then it's going to get to 5-10 years, then we haven't resolved anything. Right?
And then the backlog increases as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a long and short of the answer. But I wanted to get to the part about irregular expenditure and wasteful expenditure. I think also in the public sector, one needs to understand that there's differences between those things, and not all of them always mean there's corruption involved.
And thank you for that.
Right.
Because the question verbatim was, in the private sector, you don't see it much, but now it's happening a lot in the public sector.
Can I qualify that?
Yes.
The actual question would be, in the private sector,
there
is no wasteful expenditure, because if I had to take your money and do that, you would think I'm stealing your money.
Yes.
But in the private sector, in the public sector, it's
people
like,
can take,
you made a mistake. Isn't that the get out of jail free card for comrades?
Yeah. Okay. So, so if I can maybe just address the part around that on the question, irregular expenditure and wasteful expenditure. And what I'll do is I'll just maybe separate the answer into two. private sector and public sector. So let's start with private sector. In private sector, you hardly hear about this wasteful expenditure and irregular expenditure because processes for a private company become private processes. That's why you will never hear about it externally. That's a problem. And those things will never be publicized or be in the media because they are considered to be private, right? However, it's also good that you've got public listed companies that do report on good governance and issues around fraud in their annual reports. But our media will not go into looking into those things. And at the same time, some of those companies will try and hide those things for purposes of their reputation, right? So such things do happen, but because it's a private sector, people will try and hide them. People do get arrested in private sectors for theft in money in private sector. You've had, for example, 5 years ago, a lady that got arrested because she was stealing, I think, about 2 cents or 5 cents on each on bank clients' money and then transferring, and then she ended up making money over years from that. That lady got arrested, right? So, but such cases are not as publicized as the comrades' cases, right? The reason for that is you need to understand the difference between the two. Public sector is public money, it's my money and your money, right? A private sector money, if I lose money as a private company, it's my money. I need to deal with you for stealing my money. It's not in the public interest as to whether you stole my money. It's in my interest that I deal with you. That's the difference. So hence you will never see the difference, or hence these matters from the private sector being in the media.
As publicized as what's happening. Yes.
And I'll also try and minimize those from my perspective as much as I can from a private sector perspective, because I don't want my reputation to be damaged as a private, because then the question, like my weaknesses, my controls internally, my clients now start questioning whether, or if this person can steal his money, what is happening to our money? Or if that person stole his money, what is happening internally with ethics there and integrity of the employees? It becomes a huge issue. But in public sector, I can tell you, most people that work in public, they're not thinking about integrity, they're not thinking about independence, they're not thinking about majority of those things. They're thinking about, let me provide a service to a civil servant, and that's my job. Whether it's correct or not, most times there's no proper evaluation of whether those things are being done in a proper manner. Then in the irregular expenditure and wasteful expenditure in the public sector, let's
the food has arrived, need access to the bathroom, there's a lot happening.
Is it? Sorry, the food arrived, so you can just wave on the door there.
No, I'm saying this one is closed.
Oh,
This one.
Can go for it. I'll take a little break as well. Yes. Or the dynamic.
Exactly. 100 doesn't give you the same pizza anymore.
Yeah. No, but he gave us quite a bit and a lot of perspective regarding the difference between being in the private sector. It's more civil cases. I go direct to you. Whereas being in the public sector, it's more different. It's public's money, finance, and that's why there'll be more publicizing of what's happening there. Whereas how these ones get resolved compared to how private issues get resolved compared to public issues getting resolved, it'll be two different things.
Yeah. So can we continue?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, okay. Please. So the other thing is that we need to be mindful of when it comes to the public sector around, call it unethical behavior, corruption, these irregular expenditures, as well as wasteful expenditure, would be this matter of who is doing it. Remember, in most cases, you find that these irregular expenditures are connected to the politicians, right? And what do you expect from a politician? One is, back in the days, you expected a politician that is honest, spending in the best interest of the civilians rather than not for their own self-interest, right?
Ideals,
Nowadays, becoming a politician is a business of self-interest, and that's the issue. Not everyone that's a politician is like that, and we need to acknowledge that there's quite a lot of good politicians. Today, there's a funeral of Tito Mboweni, for example.
Yes.
I don't remember hearing any scandals about him. I might have missed it, but just as an example of good politicians.
Yes.
As to whether he's made a difference in our economy, yes or no, I think he has made a difference in our economy to a certain extent. So I would consider him to be a good politician, and may his soul rest in peace. And because we do need, more of the politicians that actually are like him, right? That are not driven by self-interest, but what is in the public interest, what is the best interest of everyone of us in the country. So then the issue of corruption becomes more of interest because now it's a politician that stole that money. And the issue is, it feels like it's a betrayal because now the person that you have voted for now goes and it doesn't even feel like it. It's actually, it is a betrayal because you voted this person in. Now suddenly what they do, they go chow your money. Like, but I voted for you to do things that are of the best interest for me.
For me,
so
yes.
how are you now chowing my money?
Yes.
So that's the issue when it comes to then this irregular expenditure and corruption, basically. So, but to a point where you were asking, why is this thing a bit of a problem? How can we solve it? I've given it a solution. Make it hard for them to, like, give you an example. In China, 2 months ago, they executed a businessman. Stay with me. A businessman. The government executed a businessman for corruption in the private sector. So what that tells you is, in China, corruption is something that is not accepted at all.
No nonsense.
Yeah. Once you are found in court that you've actually conducted corruption, whether you're in the private sector, it was your money or not, that means, if you think about it, then they say, oh, you conducted corruption, and then as a result of you paying taxes of 100 million yens, you ended up paying 20 million yens. So we've lost 80 million yens in revenue that we're supposed to collect. As a result, you're a criminal. Let's deal with you, right? So that's the extent we need. I'm not saying let's kill people, right?
But actual enforceable systems and processes that are in place to address the problem.
Exactly. The punishment has to be severe to a point that you don't see it worth doing it.
I rather.
If you meet a police cop there, they're asking for a cold drink. The punishment must be to a point where, is it worth me taking this chance, or worth me saying to this guy, rather give me a ticket and let me go? Or else lock me up, I'll go argue this thing with a judge on Monday. Which one would you rather be in, right? But obviously then the systems need to allow for such, right? Because right now we're saying, if I go to jail, then I've got a criminal case, then I can't do anything. But if I just admit to the issue, then I can go to the judge, then the judge gives me a financial punishment because it was to extent that I can get to that, right? But obviously all these things differ in different ways, right? Legal experts can advise on what is better or not. But I think my view is the punishment has to be to an extent where it makes you think twice before you even do it. Like, is it worth it? Yes, many people will argue, yes, there are those laws already because it's 15 years for a fraud, and you could get 25 years. But in many cases, what happens?
You serve
get yourself a good lawyer. What do you get? Exactly. 3-4 years, and you're out. After committing how much money in crimes? If I've got 100 million, 200 million in crimes, which you're not going to get. In many cases, they try and recover that money either way. Then they give you the 5 years because they can recover the money. But I mean, if I can get out, what do you think I'm going to do? Because when I come out, then I don't have money. What am I going to do? I'm going to continue the same thing.
Continue doing it again, yes. Exactly. There's no severity.
Exactly. So then we need to be serious about how we deal with such instances. But in closing, I think also as the public, I think there's misinformation and miseducation around the principles and call it processes of government. And it ought to be our responsibility, for example, as accountants, lawyers, to explain some of those things to people. Because people just hear on the news, Zizukoto has been arrested for irregular expenditure, or there was irregular expenditure in this municipality of so much. And then everyone then suddenly assumes, there's corruption there, right? Not every irregular expenditure is corruption. Some of it is simple things like give you an example, there's a tender that's been applied for, but when you applied, 4 of the applicants that applied submitted a tax clearance certificate that would have been, call it maybe expired at the time. So the process has not been followed correctly, right? And let's make it even worse in this case. The one that had the certificate expired gets to be the preferred bidder for that tender. Then it becomes an issue, because then from a perspective of process, the tender was supposed to have been, this document itself was supposed to be a valid document. So you should have disqualified that person. So now you need to do 2 things then as an auditor when you do that investigation. One, looking into the fact that the service get delivered. If now the government didn't lose anything, they got the service, then that's considered to be irregular, but the government
From a
did
documentation
get.
perspective.
Exactly. The government did get. But now
We
here's
quick
the
to say
thing.
money.
Exactly. So you need to then, when you hear of irregular expenditure, understand where is the issue. Some of these things will be, for example, irregular expenditure because the tender did not have, call it the specification period for it. So every tender must be given timing that we're opening it from this time and it will be finalized in 120 days, for example. If that tender has not been finalized in 120 days, you're supposed to cancel that tender and reissue a new tender.
Yeah.
If then the internal supply chain does not do that, they proceed with that tender. That entire tender is considered to be irregular expenditure. Right. Then that money becomes money that should not have been spent. But ideally, then from an administrative perspective, they could have had reasons for not actually canceling the tender, because they would be saying, for example, we need a service provider. Canceling this thing, we need to advertise for another 21 days. You're most likely going to get the same respondents to respond again. So which one would you rather have? Not have a service provider, not having a service provider, so that you as a person, you don't have anyone now sitting there in the desk to actually help you when you're waiting there. So it's that mentality. Sometimes you think like, okay, if I don't proceed with this, as the public don't have anyone to service them, because now it's an IT company that needs to provide and eat data. And if I don't have data, then all my systems are down and offline. What happens? Everyone complains that Home Affairs is always systems down, but they forget that sometimes those things happen because of the processes we have along the way.
Place.
Right.
I think.
Then you've got now, this one of wasteful expenditure. That one is, if you see that one, just know then there's definitely something that was wrong there. Because then the government paid for something, but we didn't get anything, right? And if it so happens that one, there's a clear indication or suggestion rather that there might have been corruption there. Because such things would be, for example, payments made before services were delivered, right? And in government, by policy, government cannot pay you if you haven't provided a service by procurement policies. So such things then are things that are wrong in most cases. Those cases are the cases that, everyone should rather be mindful about, and that there is most likely a corruption that is happening in there. So then when you look at financial reports of any government, provincial departments, and you see those things, your focus must be more on wasteful expenditure, because that's a disadvantage to you, because now someone has taken the money that should have benefited you and they've just been given that money for free without doing anything. Right. Obviously, then there's also some times where people will be given contracts, preferably because there has been an influence in how they get that contract, right? Process has been followed, but how they got that contract could be ideally not right. Then those are the cases that will be suggested then to the SIU to investigate for fraud, right? So there's a distinction between these. It's not like there's irregular expenditure or there is wasteful expenditure,
just systems
but because there was an influence outside, which goes against the principles of public procurement policies, then there's fraud that's involved there. Then those cases are ideally cases that are criminal cases. But hence I was saying it might be at the beginning that some of these things then would become important because we're dealing with billions here and millions, and we're dealing with politicians who have betrayed us to a certain extent because we've put them in power and now they just go and self-enrich themselves. Right. Ideally, obviously, corruption happens because there's there's an enabling environment, unfortunately. That enabling
I like
environment...
that China example, actually.
Exactly.
I prefer that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if the government doesn't allow the enabling environment to be there, to exist, then it won't exist.
All right.
Right. And this right now, our government allows the environment to enable corruption.
That kind of behavior.
Exactly.
I don't think I could qualify any other kind of like drop mic moment. I give you that.
Yeah.
You've given us quite a lot of information, and thank you for that, sir.
Yes.
I can see my producer waving like, hey.
Yeah, stop now. Yeah. Yes, that's too much information.
Yeah.
That will get the podcast into trouble.
But I appreciate it, sir. I know there's a lot more we could have spoken on, but we can always have a follow-up interview.
Yes.
Are there any last words you'd like to impart?
From my side, I think I just want to encourage everyone that's out there that's trying out something.
Yeah.
One, in business, two, in your personal life, in your personal space, trying out, feeling that it's difficult to get through the whatever that you're going through out there, and that it's not all lost. Sometimes you need to get through the challenges to get to where you are destined to be.
Yeah.
And let's not be scared of facing those challenges. The challenges are there. It's part of life.
Yeah.
If the challenges were not there, we wouldn't have so many other solutions that are out there. Because every problem has a solution for a reason.
Yeah.
And every problem creates an opportunity for someone else, right?
Yeah.
So let's not always look at problems as problems, because a problem to you is an opportunity to someone else, right? You're going through a pain, you're going through mental health. That mental health is an opportunity for a therapist.
For growth.
Right.
Yes.
It's an opportunity
Address
for
the
you.
problems and elevate over them. Yeah.
Exactly. But not hands-on or saying, for me, I prefer not to look at problems most times, but solutions. If I can solve it, let's solve it. If I can't solve it, I've done my own assessment. This is beyond my resources that I have and beyond my emotional, effort that I want to invest in it. Then I just want to let it go. So in long and short of it is, let's just work. And yeah, if you don't want to work, no one is going to do the work for you. Unfortunately, otherwise I'm going to employ you to do the work for me.
For me.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah,
I couldn't have said it any better. So thank you for that.
No, thanks,
Appreciate
my brother.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you,
I
sir.
appreciate you.
And there you have it, guys. Another installment of WARMKOP, Each One Teach One. We had an awesome talk. Linda gave us a lot of insight into the realm of accounting, and also just in essence, integrity and transparency. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And can wrap it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, sir.
Again,
Did we record though? I just thought about it now.
WARMKOP.